Hey guys, Happy here, and back again today. This time I'm going to show you guys the flight that I did when I was in Vancouver, in Canada. This was actually in Abbotsford, just outside of Vancouver. I thought I'd talk a little bit about it. Another video is going to come out talking about the kind of aspects of simulation that helps with the real thing, but I thought I'd break down the flight that I did before we got into that. So yeah, here goes. The flight that I was doing over there was with a guy called Misha. He runs a YouTube channel called Pilot Yellow, which I'll link in the description, where he vlogs his daily life as a instructor for BC Helicopters that he is also a co-owner of. Now, BC Helicopters is located here in the Abbotsford International Airport, and they are just off the kind of north side, east side, depending on where you say the center of the airport is. Um, they have, two helipads here, but very loosely operated, and they have to, obviously, since they're in the airspace of the airport, whenever they have to take off, they have to talk to the controller and stuff. And they usually get sent into the airport and then on one of the departures out of there, one of the VFR departures. So I showed up. It was fairly early in the morning. Oh, well, it was 10 a.m., which I guess isn't that early, but Um, and we showed up. We showed up just as they were doing some run-ups on the R44s. They had just gotten a new one home, which you may have seen in the vlog if you follow his vlog, of course. They had just done a cross trip from somewhere far east in Canada. Can't remember exactly where, but I think it was somewhere in Alberta. May even have been, yeah, it may even be Ontario. I can't even remember. It was a couple of days. They brought an R44 home, and they were just doing some stuff on that, and also doing some stuff on their second R44 that they had out. So both of the helipads were used. Now, it was planned that I was going to be doing the flight in the Capri G2, which is a new helicopter they've just gotten. Really cool, small, modern helicopter with a glass cockpit. Really cool helicopter, but unfortunately it had some maintenance to do, so I had to go in the Schweitzer, which, to be honest, really isn't a bad helicopter to go in. It's very smooth, and as soon as I, I talked to the guys at the place, there were quite a few there, the different mechanics and other instructors, and they said how the Schweitzer is a really good startup helicopter as well, since it's very smooth in the controls, and even though it's small, it's fairly stable. So since both helipads were taken, we got the Swatch out of the hangar, which is this building. They have the hangar here, and dragged it over here and took off from the grass. I was there with my parents, so they've recorded both the takeoff and the landing. I guess the one reason, looking back at it, that it kind of sucks we didn't go in the Capri was because you didn't have a mount in the Schweitzer. We weren't able to record the flight, whereas we would have been able to do that if it was in the Capri on the GoPro. But nevertheless, it was an amazing experience, and I got the landing and the takeoff, which I guess is kind of what was the most interesting. But we'll get to that part. So took off from the grass here just on the edge, and started the helicopter up. I had the checklist in my hand. He was following along. He was talking what he was doing. I didn't really do anything in the takeoff. I was just sat there stunned at being in a helicopter and being involved and knowing that I was gonna be flying it not so long. So we got contacted the tower after we had gotten the ATIS and checked the emergency channel. That's something that I didn't actually know that you do. But I guess it's a really good startup procedure. If you are at an airport that has a designated emergency channel, you check that to hear if anything's going on. Because if there's chatter on the emergency channel, there's most likely going to be an emergency going on, and you might as well shut your helicopter down, because not a lot of stuff's going to be flying while there's an emergency going on. Or at least they're not going to be starting up and letting you go fly if they can. So we talked to the tower, and they cleared us into the training area, which is the center here. This is where a lot of helicopters and stuff train, but they just cleared us in here, and then we were cleared to cross the runway here, which is 19 and 01, and we crossed that at about 500 feet, So that was pretty cool. I've actually got some notes on my phone, so I'll quickly get those up, because right after I had done the trip, since I didn't get it recorded, I thought I would write down notes, quite detailed, of how everything happened, so that should hopefully help. So we got cleared out, and then we got cleared on the northwest departure route, which I guess is mostly just north, but it is the departure that follows this road, which is a pretty good VFR reference, follows this road all the way up till we get to the river. I think the airspace ends somewhere around here, just outside the actual Abbotsford city, or at least the tower, but this is the northwest departure route, which is what we got. So as we were, he leveled it out at about 1,000 feet before we got over the highway, I believe, and at that point he gave the cyclic to me, and it was kind of, the first half a second it was really weird, but I really, quickly got used to it, because it was, this is something I'm going to get into more in detail, but it is, the muscle memory of what to do to get the helicopter to do what you want, and kind of understanding how the helicopter should look, like the attitude, the roll, just really helps you get that, picture of how it should look, and then your muscle memory helps you to obtain that picture without you having to think much about it. So as soon as I got the cyclic, at the first it feels kind of weird, because, you can actually feel what the helicopter is doing, and you can feel especially what the rotor's doing in the actual cyclic, because it's connected directly to the rotors. So he gave me the cyclic, and we were flying level at about 1,000 feet, and he's told me to do some turns. As soon as we got out of the airspace around here, we did some turns. Right turns, left turns, kind of going up here in the northeast area. So that was really cool. I quickly got all three controls. I got the collective and the pedals as well, and as we were flying straight in level, that was fairly simple. You didn't have to move the collective. You didn't really have to move the pedals. So that wasn't really something I had um, to worry so much about at that time. Something kind of cool. We came up here, and I might have been around this hill. May even have been over here. I can't exactly remember. We actually saw a bear, a black bear, that was in like a field, kind of like this, playing around in some bushes, kind of in the center of it. There was some bushes, and it was playing around in that, maybe looking for berries, who knows? But that was just really cool. So Misha grabbed the controls back, and we got down low to about 300 feet above the ground, and did a couple of orbits around the bear. Got a really good look of it, which was really awesome. We did, of course, do some turns, and as I told you, but we also did some climbs. Mostly a climb up to the top of a hill, where there is a antenna that has a small helipad. So we climbed up there, got kind of set up on the approach, and then flew over it, and then Misha grabbed the controls back and did a landing onto that helipad, which is really awesome. It really shows, what helicopters is all about, being free and having the ability to land wherever you want. In this case, just a small helipad, kind of overgrown, coming in on a steep approach over some trees. It was absolutely amazing, and the kind of feeling you get in your stomach as you're, there in real life, it's absolutely incredible. We took off from there, and then we also did a landing on a logging road. So one of these roads, not these specific roads, I think it was on the left side of a hill. May have been up here, I can't even exactly remember. But we come down, and we did a landing on one of these kind of logging roads, and it was one of the ends. So that was really cool, again, showing the ability that you have with a helicopter. Took off from there, and then I got the controls back, and he told me to set up an approach into a small spot that was also a logging road. So it was the end of a logging road, kind of where they have like a turnaround point, so it was pretty good spaced. And he told me to set up the approach, so I did so, and it was kind of a sharp turn on final, because we were kind of coming in along the edge of a valley. I had to do a sharp left-hand turn to not, go into the side of a hill, kind of like this. and that was really awesome. I got to do the approach in, and then he of course took the controls back for the actual landing. Every time he took the controls back, though, he told me keep your hands on the controls, because even though you're not flying the helicopter, you can really feel the kind of inputs needed, and your hands are following, so you really get a good idea of how it works. All right, so at that point, we started doing a flight back to Abbotsford, and we were, I guess, quite a bit up here because we got down towards this river here, followed the right side of this, flew over Stave Falls, and as we got down this side, pretty around here, Misha said, all right, well, we're going to do a power recovery authorization. That was really interesting. Probably above, yes, just above this dam here. He cut the throttle, did an approach down. He had actually this exact spot in mind. One of these small islands on this river. This sandbank looked really good. There's no bushes on the sandbank, so that's like a perfect spot where you can, land softly and safely. If you don't make the spot exactly, you land in the water, which isn't the worst thing. You're gonna live. That's a pretty good location. So I did the approach in. He shot the approach kind of off course, so that way he could turn in whenever we were at the proper distance and altitude from the spot. So if we were going to be a bit far, we could extend it out and then turn in, leaving and that's something that of course you learn with a lot of experience, but that way you can time and really get your spots really accurate. So started the flare just over the water and leveled out in a hover with the throttle turned back on about the center of it. So that was perfect. That would have not only kept everybody alive, but it would also have preserved or kept the helicopter in a good condition, except for, of course, the engine would have been gone if it was a real scenario. All right, so we then started, did a departure. I got the controls again, and then we took an approach into Glen Valley. And at this point, I had all three controls, and I was just told to do an approach into this specific field. And it was kind of interesting because we were coming in from the north here, and along this road, there are power lines. So I shot an approach in, and I believe it was right above this power line. Of course, having to do all approaches that go over power lines, you do it over the poles. So I shot the approach in over this pole. We were, way above it anyway, so it wasn't any danger. But it's always good having that in your mind and always doing it regardless of how close you are when you're doing an approach. So shooting it over the pole, coming into this field, and coming down into the field, I really, had problems with the rudder. The collective and the cyclic was, all good. That wasn't a problem, but the rudder was just really different. And I guess it's because I'm not used to having rudder pedals. I don't use rudder pedals in my actual setup. So I'm used to doing, shifting the stick, twisting it, left or right. So I didn't have the muscle memory for the pedals, and that's the point where I realized that even though the shape of the cyclic, even though how much pressure you need to put, even though it's different in so many ways, using a joystick in front of your computer screen than real life, you get the muscle memory, you get the idea, if you want the helicopter to bank left, you don't have to think about what to do. And with the pedals, I had to think about what I had to do. I had to think to myself, I need my nose to go left, meaning I need to push the left pedal in. And that was something, that was the one thing that I was struggling with. So that was really, really interesting, seeing how that was kind of unfolding. So coming in, and we did our actual landing, or not landing. We did came down into a hover in this field, and I still had all three controls. And I got down. We were at one point. I remember us being like 60 degrees nose right from our flight path, almost flying directly sideways. But we got down onto the ground, and I was in the hover. I remember at the start I was uh, doing pedal turns without me wanting to when I was in the hover. But my cyclic and my collective was, where it should be, and I was hovering it pretty well. And when I then got kind of, got the controls of the rudder under control, then everything kind of smoothed out a bit. So that was really interesting, and he said he was really impressed with that. Which at that point, I was really really happy about that, and that's kind of when I knew that this helicopter simming, flying a helicopter in a simulator, actually does help, because I was keeping that helicopter steady, and that's something. You see so many videos of people who've never flown a helicopter before, and they really struggle with it. So it was awesome to see that, all of the hours put into flying a helicopter in a simulator really kind of helped. So, and I guess kind of the reason I knew it helped is because I was hovering it, but my rudders were lagging, and that's the one thing I don't have that matches a real helicopter in real life. So it's so awesome, knowing that simulating helps. All right, so we were in that hover. We did a couple of rudder turns. The first rudder turn was very slow for me. Halfway throughout the turn, we did 360-degree pedal turns, sorry. And halfway throughout that pedal turn, I started losing a bit control of the cyclic, so I kind of stopped, let the pedals be, and try to get the control, or the cyclic under control again. And that worked really well. Kind of a bit what I've talked about in my video talking about how to hover a helicopter in X-Plane. It's just kind of focusing on that one thing, and then not overcorrecting, not getting into that pilot-induced oscillation. So that was really awesome. Also seeing that working, relaxing the pedals and just focusing on the cyclic, and I got it back on track. Did the other half, and then we did the other way around, which was the way where the torque automatically wants you to go. So that way, it started going really fast, really quick. You have to really be on top of, doing a pedal turn to the right, because if you don't put enough left pedal in, you just start going around really fast without you really noticing. So we did that. That was pretty cool. And then we did a couple of touchdowns and takeoffs. Just, touchdown from hover, touchdown back into the hover, or takeoff back into the hover. And the one thing, of course, being in the Schweitzer, when it's loaded up on fuel, you have two people in the front. All right, sorry to just interrupt myself here, but I said some rubbish. I tried to say, or I said that you could feel where the cyclic was, which is of course not true, because you're not feeling the cyclic relative to a center that's static. You're feeling the cyclic relative to a center that you have set with the trim yourself. What I was trying to say is that when you have the helicopter, filled up with two people at the front and fuel on the left side, plus you have the tail rotor blowing air to the left, it means you should have a left roll or left bank attitude, and a nose low, kind of the nose towards the ground attitude, while you're in the hover to keep it steady. Which means that you land with your left front skid first, and then you have to bring the rest down. So you have to bring the left skid and the back parts of the skids, you have to bring that down, but you have to bring it down slowly. So to do that, you slowly lower the collective, but at the same time pushing the cyclic further forward and further to the left. And that's gonna, smooth it out, meaning you don't just kind of plop it down, but you actually it's a smooth transition down, kind of like doing a sloped landing, which was kind of interesting. So we did a couple of touchdowns and takeoffs. First touchdown was absolutely awful. I think I was kind of rudder turning while still on the ground on the grass, so that was kind of sketchy. And yeah, that was just pretty cool. Even did a slope landing, which wasn't really intentional, but because there's these, I think it was, it's one of these lines that go across that was, I guess, like an old tire track or something that was kind of deep, that one of the skids kind of fell into without really noticing, because it was overgrown with grass, but nothing dangerous or out of the ordinary. So that was really, really awesome. We did also a couple of hover taxis, hover taxiing forward, and then also some side-to-side hover taxiing, so flying sideways at walking speed and flying, both right and left sideways. That was really, really awesome. Now, getting into the bit of the interesting, juicy stuff, we did a departure out of here. We did that out towards the south, and that was also all me on the controls, not Mishy touching words. But again, that there was kind of two things on the departure. One thing was, of course, the rudders. I didn't have the rudders under control yet, even though we'd just been doing hover work. The muscle memory wasn't there yet, so we were going sideways on the approach out, sideways right, sideways left. It was all over the place, but that was also kind of because you get a lot of power change when you do your departures. You get your translational lift, changing how much rudder you need. You get how much power you're pulling, changing how much rudder you need. So there's a lot of adapting. You really need to use that muscle memory to keep the helicopter straight and level, or straight, pointing in the direction of flight, which was more of a challenge than you'd think, or at least for me, because I wasn't used to it, as I said. Now the second thing on the departure that was kind of very interesting, and something that you don't realize in the simulator, is translational lift is it's interesting when you don't know when you need to give that extra cyclic, and it becomes even more interesting when you have to put a lot of pressure on the forward cyclic, because of course the helicopter is trimmed. Right, I guess I didn't really talk about that, but cyclic trimming. I was in control of the cyclic trimming for about half the flight, the last half where we were down doing hover work. And cyclic trimming works kind of like in a plane, I guess, where you change where the center of your cyclic is, if that makes sense. So where you need to hold your cyclic, if you're in a hover, you need to hold it about the middle. So you have that trim so that there's not a lot of pressure being in the middle. But if you try to push it forward, you get a lot of pressure, right? It doesn't necessarily want to go forward. Now you just have to push through that on the departure, which could be really tough because it's directly connected to the rotor blade, so there's no hydraulics helping you, and you have that trim kind of fighting you. So on the departure, it was surprisingly tough to push through with the cyclic. So I think we ended up doing 30 knots and flying pretty much straight up before I got the hang of how much forward cyclic you really needed to push through. So that was a pretty cool experience. We flew east, flew towards these is kind of a landmark, these greenhouses, because that is the road that you take back south to Aberystwyth International Airport. Still me on all three controls, and as we were about to fly into the control zone, Misha actually asked me if I'd done any radio control work, talking with the ATC or something like that. And I said I had, of course, tried VATSIM, but I wasn't really wanting to try it out in real life. That's something that can come if I actually get the chance to take an actual pilot's license. So he called up the radio, saying our position, our altitude, and our intentions. And the controller told us to keep our altitude, which was 800 feet, and then pass over the tower at 800 feet, and then cross runway 19 and 01, and then fly to the BC helicopters. Now, the reason for that is there was a plane that was on final into 19. It was like a 2-engined, maybe like a Beechcraft plane that was coming in to land on runway 19. So we of course followed down, flew over the tower which is located here, which is pretty much midfield of 19 and 01. So flew over that at 800 feet. As soon as we were past it, started descending. Still had all three controls, and I was doing the descent. He told me to fly towards a building that is here. Doesn't look like it's actually built on Google Maps yet. It doesn't look like the imagery is up to date to what is in real life right now. But there's like a white warehouse building. Told me to fly towards that. So that's what I did. Came along here over the taxiway, and then a left turn around these trees. Now you can't see, but these trees are kind of tall, so we avoid them on the approach into the helipad. They avoid them flying, just to the right of them, and then making a left-hand turn. I still had all three controls, and this is kind of the interesting part, because he was apparently so impressed with with what I could, or thought that it was responsible to let me try and land the helicopter back at their hangar, which was really awesome. So at that point, the right helipad was clear. There was still an R-44 on the left helipad, but the right helipad was clear. The R-44 that was there had taken off, and we actually, we saw it flying past when we were up doing the landings in the mountains. Um, we came in. This field here is berries. I can't remember exactly what berries, but they're quite tall berry bushes, about 2 meters tall. And I was there, before they had harvested them, and they were, really close to being harvested. So they were, fully grown. So he told me that at that time of the year they do steep approaches into, at least they keep um, a certain altitude above these berries to not damage anything. Um, so it ended up becoming a steep approach into the BC Helicopters HQ. And me, still at the controls, absolutely awesome. Brought it down, and I have video of it because both my dad and my mum took video of it, and you can really see in the video how I was all over the place on the rudder, but the cyclic and collective part of things was, that was kind of on point. That was coming in a steep approach, um, bringing the helicopter into the helipad, and I actually managed to do the whole landing, and that was just an absolutely awesome experience. Misha said afterwards he didn't touch the controls once.
That entire approach was all him. The landing was all him.
So that was just absolutely amazing. And kind of the point of this, I'm not making this video just to brag about how how good my first flight was, but this is really kind of showing both how far helicopter simulation has come. It's come so far and is so good by now that you can train proper, procedures and really train flying a helicopter to the point where you can go out and fly a real life helicopter simply by sitting in your living room and having spent, $1,000 or so on a setup. It's absolutely incredible how far that's come, and it's absolutely incredible how far you can get with just spending a lot of time in front of your computer playing a simulator. And that's just so mind blowing to me. Now I guess I'll wrap this video up here, but I'm going to create a second video that's going to talk more about what parts of helicopter simulation really helps with the real thing, and what I kind of recommend to do or to think about when you want to do your actual simming to get the best experience, and possibly get the best experience if you ever go out and fly in real life. So ending this video here, seriously, if you have the opportunity to go out and try and fly in real life, do it. Even if you don't want to be a helicopter pilot in real life, just go out, get a practice helicopter session if you're really into it, and it'll, really change your perspective on helicopter flying, and you really get a good feel of how close it is, and you really get a good feel of what helicopter simulation is missing and what it can never really have, which is that motion aspect. And you can say it as much as you want, you can see as many videos as you want, but in the real thing, there's so many movements, so many sounds that you can't recreate in the simulator, that makes it so much more cool, obviously. Yeah, so expect that video coming fairly soon. I am back to college now, so videos might not be coming out so fast, but I should have, a video out a week or something. And just before we end up, or end the video, I just want to say a big thank you to the magazine called Helisimmer. The guy over there called Sergio Costa, he made an article about me, which was really, really nice of him. So I'm guessing maybe a couple of my viewers that's here have come from his article. So big thanks to Helisimmer. Go check them out. They have a bunch of good articles on, news about helicopters, and they have a bunch of good tips and tricks video series, talking about how good simulators are, how accurate they are, stuff like that. Go check them out. I'll leave a link in the description. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So until next time, guys, which should be soon, take care.